Okay, we're going to be looking at operant conditioning as a way to learn and process things around us. So, operant conditioning is learning through consequences, where we can achieve the desired behaviors by presenting the learning individual with certain things. So, there's a process called shaping, where we achieve these desired behaviors by encouraging each process with like a phase of conditioning. So, for example, it's like if you're teaching a young child to tie their shoelaces, shaping would be giving them praise after each step to make sure that they continue doing what they are learning. So there are four key concepts within operant conditioning that we really need to get clear before we move on to examples. So the first one is reinforcement. Reinforcement is good. Reinforcement is the behavior, the desired behavior being repeated. You want this behavior to be repeated again and again. Punishment is behavior that you don't want to be repeated. Punishment is when your desired outcome is not happening. And then the most important distinction between positive and negative here is we don't mean positive or negative as in good or bad. We mean positive or negative as in positive is adding something and negative is removing something. And that's really the main four. So we add these words before the reinforcement or punishment, and we'll see examples later on. But the most important distinction is reinforcement is good, punishment is bad, positive is adding, and negative is removing. So a theory that supports this, and actually the person who came up with operant conditioning was a psychologist named Skinner. So Skinner created a box, and it was a totally enclosed box, and he would put a rat inside of it, close the box up, and there were multiple buttons or levers within this box, and he was kind of just trying to see how the rat could learn through its own actions. For example, if the rat pushed button a treat would fall out. But if he pushed button B, then he would be electrocuted. So this is learning through consequences because the rat is testing out which button to press, and based on the consequences, he then knows next time which one to go for again. And Skinner's box also revealed something we call reinforcement schedules. And this is basically the rate at which a stimulus or the reinforcement is happening. So the first one we have is a fixed ratio. Fixed ratio is like the reward is given after a certain set amount of times. So the rat is given a treat after he presses the button 5 times, and that happens every 5 times. And in application, that would look something like a buy 10, get 1 gift card from a coffee shop. They give you a gift card and they cross off a drink every time you get a new drink, so you know how close you are to your reward. The second one is a variable ratio, and instead of having a set amount of times before you get your reward, there's a variable amount of time. So you don't know how many tries it's going to take for you to achieve that desired result. And a really obvious and really powerful example of this is gambling or a slot machine, which is also why it's really addicting, because a variable ratio means it could happen once every 1,000 times, but it also means it could happen one time and then another time in close ratio, but you just don't know when. The third one we have is fixed interval, and both of these ratios just mean it's a set amount of time something happens, but interval means it's a set time duration. So fixed interval is a time duration. It's after 10 minutes, the dispenser will drop a treat. So after a month, you will receive a paycheck, and you know that every month you're gonna get this paycheck. And because of this, your behavior starts to kind of increase towards the end of when you know the reward will come. And then the last one is a variable interval, and that just means you don't know how long it is until the next reward will be. Like, you don't know how long the time duration is. So it's kind of like opening your phone to see a notification because you don't know whether or not that notification will be there. And this means that you're constantly checking for things because you don't know what the duration between these reward drops are going to be. So now bringing it back to the four key concepts, we add positive and negative in front of each one, and that gives it a different meaning. So if we focus on reinforcements first, again, reinforcements are things and behaviors that you want to be repeated. So a positive reinforcement would be adding a stimulus to increase a desired behavior. For example, if you do the chores, you get a certain amount of pocket money, right? So in this case, the reinforcement, the behavior that you're trying to repeat is doing the chores, and the stimulus that you are adding is pocket money. So you're trying to achieve the outcome by adding pocket money. The reverse of this, achieving desired outcome, let's say your desired outcome is to do your homework. Your desired outcome is to do your homework, and your parents say, okay, once you do your homework, we will remove the chores you have to do. So in this case, you're gonna go do your homework so you can avoid doing the chores. And the negative here, the removal, is the removal of your chores to achieve the desired outcome of doing your homework. Now moving on to punishment. Punishment is the behavior that we're avoiding, not the behavior that we are reinforcing. We don't want this behavior. So positive punishment is adding a not so pleasant stimulus to decrease the chance of this behavior happening. So maybe the punishment is every time you, I don't know, get a bad mark on your homework, you have to do 2 more chores. So in this case, you're adding the chores, which is a negative stimulus, to avoid the outcome of doing bad on your homework or your tests, I guess. So you're adding a unpleasant stimulus to avoid a bad consequence. And here we have negative punishment. Negative, again, being taking away something. So say you do bad on your test. If you do bad on your test, that's an outcome we don't want to repeat. And your negative stimulus is going to be removing your phone. You get your phone taken away every time you do bad on a test. So the negative thing here, we're removing an item, which is your phone, and the punishment is happening because you didn't do well on your test. So in order to then engineer a desired outcome, you don't want your phone to be taken away, so you try harder and get a better mark for your phone back. And the way that operant conditioning works, it actually works in a lot of settings, especially educational ones, because you can associate different things with meaningful stimulus, and the learner can then remember and retain this information to change their behavior. Especially at a young age, it's quite powerful because you don't want to, you want to stay within the desired outcomes because you want certain things. So usually in an educational context, operant conditioning is used. But it can also be useful for things like therapy or recovering from addiction in that.